Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Matchfit Football Podcast. I'm your host, Darren, back again with another episode. And today I am joined by a professional footballer, is playing in Sydney, Australia for Sydney Wanderers, a recent addition to the Sydney Wanderers squad, Jordi Swibel. Jordi, welcome to the show. Glad to get you on.
Thanks very much, mate. Appreciate that. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Well, like we just said, I'm really, really glad to get you here. But like we just said, you're a recent addition, to Sydney Wanderers, the Western Sydney Wanderers. You moved from Sydney FC. Um, we do get a lot of listeners who are younger players. They want to go pro, or they're trying to improve their game. Maybe they are under a scholarship or coming up through the academies at various clubs. So I want to touch on something because it's quite unique to have someone on the show that's been recently involved in a transfer. We're going to get into the mindset part of the podcast later on and the performance aspect as well. But I really want to touch on the transfer business. How does it work? And I know you moved on deadline day, so it was kind of all go for you. Talk us through that. Tell me everything that happens in that day and how hectic and crazy it is to be on the move on deadline day.
Yeah, yeah, like you said, it's pretty hectic. Um, I moved on from my previous club, which was Sydney FC, where I was in the youth team. I was there for 5 years, and I had a great time there. And then it was time for pastures new, so I moved on. And then yeah, just was at Western Sydney for a while, and then finally got something over the line. But it happened to be on the deadline day, which was pretty crazy, like you said. So yeah, it was. I knew everything would get done and over the line, but it's very hectic. Like you said, calling my agent and talking to the club, and obviously with COVID as well, it's been difficult to see people face to face. So doing all that, it has been very difficult. So everything got over the line about 8 o'clock at 8:30 that night, which was quite late, but everything was done. It was all good. So yeah, it was a pretty hectic experience to be a part of. But yeah, it was great.
Even the mental side of that, going through agents and going from saying goodbye to your teammates at one club and then moving on to the next club and trying to get everything done in that day. And then probably the next day you're straight into training. That must have been an exhausting couple of days.
Yeah, well, I was actually our season finished. I think it was in maybe end of June, and then we had a little bit of a break. So I was coming at the end of my contract with my old club, and then the season for this coming season wasn't really preseason wasn't starting for a few weeks, so we had some time off. But I knew that I was going to be leaving anyway, so I was still in the process of finding a new club. I wasn't too sure where I was going. And then obviously here in Australia, but especially in Sydney, we had a major lockdown where we were in lockdown for, I think it was just over 3 months. So, there was a long time there where I had to do training on my own. And I wasn't with the team, which was difficult, but, I'm a very, motivated person. And, I got out there and I trained, twice a day, every single day for however long it was. And then that really helped me to then, when I got given the opportunity to go and train with Western Sydney, I hit the ground running, and that only benefited me, on the pitch. And then, yeah, but like you said, it's tough when you have to leave somewhere where you're so used to when you're there for 5 years. Just the daily things, even driving into training, the same route that you take to training now changes. So it's different, but I'm very happy with my new club. Everything's great, going great there. Our season starts next week, so yeah, everything's looking great.
Well, it's glad to hear that. Season start next week. Wish you the best of luck on that. We'll be keeping tabs on you, see how you do. I'm sure you're
Thank
excited to get things underway. But I want to go back in time a little bit. Tell me about falling in love with football. What was it that drew you to football or to soccer in Australia? And when did you make the decision, or when did you know that you could have a full-time career in professional football?
Yeah. Well, my dad played football, and he was the one that took me to games, took me to trainings when I was 4 or 5 years old, and I was kicking the ball about the house when I was 2 years old. So I've always had a ball on my feet. I'd say maybe the moment that I fell in love with football. It was interesting. I was listening to another podcast this morning where Dan Carter, the New Zealand rugby player, was on, and he said there was a moment in his career when he fell in love with rugby. And then it made me think this morning, actually, what made me fall in love with football. And, when the Australian national team, the Socceroos, qualified for the 2006 World Cup, we played Uruguay, and the game went to penalties.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was our first World Cup qualification in, I think, something like 34 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I was there at the game, and, I was maybe 5 or 6 years old. And I just remember that feeling. And, when we scored that winning penalty, just falling absolutely in love with the game. And I said to myself, this is what I want. There's nothing more in life than I want to be on that pitch and to experience this. This is, this is it. This is what I want to do. And then to get onto your point about, when I thought I could make it, I've always been someone who's had to work harder than others to get some form of success. Things weren't, handed to me. I was talented, but I had to work, extremely, extremely hard. And that's been the whole case through my whole career ever since I've been, 14, 15. So, when I first went to Sydney FC, I was, I think I just turned 18, or I was still 17 at the time. And, I had to work extremely hard even when I got there, in the youth team. And I remember my first training session with the first team, I was miles off it. Just the physicality, the tempo, the pace of everything was just different. And I knew that I had so much more to work on. And then, ever since, then playing against, kids, your age and some a little bit older, and everyone's got the same goal. And then, as a striker, you're scoring goals, you're getting assists, week in, week out in the youth team. That gives you confidence that, what, maybe I am made for this. And, this is, something that I can do. So, I've always had that belief in myself. But when I got to do that, at Sydney, that was something that, really spurred me on to have more belief in myself.
One of the really interesting points that you made was you always had to work harder. You mentioned earlier when you were training by yourself, you're highly motivated. So you go out and you do your 2 sessions a day, no matter what, and you do whatever it is that you do in those sessions. But the working harder part was something that really grabbed me. And I want to know, was that something that you noticed early on for yourself? That you noticed you needed to work harder to be at the level that maybe your colleagues or peers were at? Or was that something where a coach was able to say, look, Jordi, you've got talent, but you need to start working a little bit harder. So where did that connect? Like, how did you connect those dots to say, I need to work harder to get where I'm at?
Yeah, I don't think there was, a coach or someone that told me specifically and personally that I have to do extras than anyone else. Obviously, I've had coaches that have, as a collective to the whole entire team, have said, things like, the one percenters, they always add up. Making sure that you're the first one in and last one out. Little things like that. But I think for me personally, I always, enjoyed. I got so much enjoyment from doing extra work, whether that was finishing at the end of training, or any sort of ball work or sprints or any running, anything in the gym, any stretching, anything that was extra. I enjoyed doing that. And the reason I got into that was just because of the enjoyment, really, just knowing in the back of my mind that, if someone walks off the pitch and I'm still on there, I'm getting better than them. It was a simple, mental thing for me. And once you start it, you kind of become addicted to it. So, it's kind of like a drug. It's addictive because it's a competition with not only others, but it's a competition with yourself. So always trying to be the first one to training, the last one to leave, always, doing extra work in the gym or on the pitch. So I think that came from, within myself, and it was very self-motivating. And then as time went on, I felt that continuing to do these extras will help me in the here and the now, but also in the long term.
It's an interesting point because that individual, motivation to go and do that, that extra training or that individual focus to stay behind and do some finishing, or stay behind and do some sprints, or to stay behind to do that whatever, to get that extra 1% that you talked about. Have you noticed that paying dividends on the pitch? Have you noticed a significant increase or more significant development, if I can use that word, in your skills, in your ability, maybe even in just your mindset, because maybe you've always been able to do it physically, but it's that reassurance in your mindset. Have you noticed a significant difference from doing those extra sessions?
Yeah, most definitely. I think it's you know, every little single thing that I've included into my so-called extras has helped me. Whether that be I think it's very overlooked. Even the simple things like your nutrition, your hydration, your sleep. Being on top of that, that always helps. And then all the things on the pitch. As a striker, knowing where the goal is and finishing is has to be second nature. So finding the corners is something that we work on as strikers. Just touch and shoot straight into the corners, and that becomes second nature. If you do maybe 40 extra shots a day, and you're doing that 4 times a week at training, that adds up towards the end of the season, and you've had thousands of more shots than someone who isn't doing it. So that's obviously going to help. And then things in the gym. When I started to get into doing my extras, I was in that developmental stage. So from about I got into doing it around 15, 16, and now I'm 22. So over time, in this age, you're going to see development in your body anyway, but adding in extra things, especially in the gym, you see even more changes. So you might not see someone for a while, and then you see them a few years down the path, and they go, wow, you've really gotten stronger, or gotten bigger, or you look much quicker and more defined, or whatever it may be. And that's because you've been doing all the hard work, which then in turn helps you on the pitch.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. And I think that's vital, especially for young people listening to this podcast. You're hearing someone who is still incredibly young and still has their whole career ahead of them, but you've started these extras early, and they're already paying dividends for you. It's something that you've incorporated into probably your daily routine now, where you always go out and do 2 sessions. You mentioned that yourself. You go out and do 2 sessions every day, whether you're at training or individually, and it's obviously paying off really well for you on the football pitch. You mentioned earlier on when you were responding, you talked about nutrition, you talked about sleep, and I think a lot of the time, I like to word it this way. When we watch footballers, we see 90 minutes on a football pitch, and that's really all we see as supporters. We don't see behind the scenes or behind the curtain. And behind the scenes is, you mentioned double training sessions, constant hard work, constant dedication and discipline. And incorporated into that discipline is, of course, nutrition and sleep pattern. Talk to me a little bit about your nutritional, your diet, your nutrition, how you stay on top of that, and obviously making sure you get the right amount of sleep every night and how that benefits you.
Yeah, as a young footballer, you don't even think of these things, but as you then transition into the professional game, you then get to understand just how important these things are. So yeah, sleep wise, I always try and keep the same routine. I'm up at 6:30 in the mornings for training. So I like to get my 8.5, 9 hours sleep. And sleep is so important. Even after a hard day's training, I might come home and have a little bit of a nap as well, just to help the body recover. It's so good for recovery. And then nutrition wise, for me, it's had to be a lot of trial and error over the years, but I think I've kind of perfected it now, and I understand my body the most, which again, for other people is the most important thing. What works for me might not work for someone else. It's all about finding what's best for you. But just the standard stuff, just eating extremely healthy foods, regular meals, making sure that you're having enough carbs before games, but enough protein after trainings and after games to refuel and rebuild muscle. So I like to eat healthy, lots of salads and chicken and fish and all stuff like that, lots of fruit, and also hydration. Hydration is so important, especially here in Australia. It gets very hot during the summer. We play during summer. That's when our season runs, so it gets very hot. So hydration is very, very key. But yeah, like I said, it's trial and error. I've seen, multiple nutritionists and, trying to work out what's best for me. And I think at the moment I've perfected that. And that just gives me the right amount of energy to go and perform my best, and then the right amount of, rebuilding and refueling for my body.
I think one of the fundamentals with professional football is understanding and knowing your own body. I know you mentioned that you know your own body well enough, and what works for you might not work for someone else, and vice versa. And that understanding of your body has proven incredibly fruitful for you over the course of your professional career so far, and it will continue to reap the rewards, you know, later on into your career. Would you supplement anything into your diet, or do you take everything from your meals and snacks?
Um, yeah, I do supplement every morning. I take vitamin C. I take fish oil. I take magnesium and probiotic as well. Um, if like you said, it's best to probably get those from, just straight food. But, I think those things are just something that, whether it's mental or whether it's not, I just think they, might give me a little bit of a helping hand. So I just take those. And then obviously we have, protein that we take after training, also creatine, and any caffeine that you might need before training or anything like that. So those are kind of the supplements that I'll have on a day-to-day basis.
What about for your recovery? Do you do anything specific for recovery? Do you take any ice baths, any cryotherapy, anything along those lines? Or after, especially when you do 2 sessions a day and you've went out and killed yourself and you've went and done all those extras and all those sprints, when you come home or when you go to the physio or whatever it is that you do after training, how do you make sure that you're in tip-top shape to go again the next day?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting that people get kind of caught up in doing all the ice baths and the massage, which is great. I'm a very big advocate for it. There's a lot of studies and what have you, but I think the main important things that people overlook is what we were talking about before: is nutrition, hydration, and sleep. They're the most important ones, which take the most time to understand, and then once you get them right, then you understand how good they are for you. But I do everything that all other professionals do, whether that's an ice bath after training, maybe a little pool session, just going for a light swim, or just some light hydrotherapy, a nice massage. We've got great massage therapists, and then we've got the game readies as well, which is great. And that's basically it, really. That's what I need for me personally. Other people don't enjoy certain things, and some others like other things. So, like we were saying before, each to their own. But those are the main things that I like to do for my body to recover.
It's fascinating to hear what different people do, and having spoken to this, several professional footballers throughout this series, this season on the Matchfit podcast, it's incredible to see what different professionals do to recover. And it's like you say, when you understand your body and each to their own, and you figure out what works for you and how you best recover, it's incredible. I find it fascinating listening to how different professionals recover after
Yeah.
intense training days. Talking about the training pitch, I want to know a typical day in the life for you when you walk into training, because we've spoken to several goalkeepers on the show so far, and we've spoken to a couple of strikers. Talk me through a typical training day for you as a striker.
Okay. I won't talk you through match day -1, because they're, quite slow and boring. There's not much to obviously preparing for the game the next day, so there's not much. But maybe a session earlier in the week, maybe a Tuesday before a day off, which is a hard day where we kind of do a little bit of everything. So I'm obviously in bed, around 9:30, 10 o'clock. I wake up at 6:30. I'll drive to training. Takes me around an hour to get to training. So I arrive there around just before 8 o'clock. Get into the training ground, get changed, have some breakfast, which is usually maybe some yogurt and some muesli and some fruit, or maybe some toast with peanut butter. I don't love to eat too much, but I know that I have to eat. And then I'll always have a coffee. I need a coffee before training, otherwise I'm a zombie. And then it's into the gym after that. There might be, it depending on the time, we might have some of the Champions League or Premier League games on. that are on over there in the UK or Europe. And then it's straight into the gym. At about 8:45, I like to do my own prehab, so I foam roll, make sure I feel loose. I do a little bit of mobility work. That takes around, half an hour, and then I'm into my activation stuff. So all my mini bands, my hamstring activation, all that type of stuff. And then around 9:30, we have team prehab in the gym. So we all do a team prehab all together, which takes around 15 minutes, just some exercises that the strength and conditioning coach puts on for us. And then we might have a meeting before training, or we'll be straight out onto the pitch. So we start training about 10 o'clock, be on the pitch for about an hour and a half. If we're taking a Tuesday as an example, it'll be, a warm up into some passing and then possession, and then we'll go into mini games. And the games are great. Everyone loves the games. It's very high intensity. Tackles flying in, goals being scored, which is great. Everyone loves that competitiveness. And then after, I always love to do finishing, whether it's a hard day or a light day. I always love to do extras. So me and a couple of the lads will go grab a keeper, and we'll do some finishing for anywhere between 15, 20 minutes, depending on how we feel. And then after that, and it's always hard to get us off the pitch. We always want to stay longer, but the coaches have to almost drag us in. And then we'll go in and have some. I always have a little, just like, electrolyte drink, just to replenish some of the fluids I lost, and the sodium I lost. And then it's into the gym again. On these Tuesdays, we usually have lower body, so we'll do some lower body explosive, powerful stuff. And that we'll finish that, which takes around half an hour, 45 minutes. And then after that, we've got lunch. So have a protein shake, sit down as a team, have some lunch. And then after that, we've usually got a meeting. So we'll be split up into defenders, midfielders, and attackers. So we usually have a meeting then. We'll rewatch the game that we played over the weekend. Just, look at places where we can strengthen ourselves and things that we did well. And then after that, I'll maybe chill out for maybe 10, 15 minutes in the change room. And then I'll usually go back into the gym and do my own extras, kind of whatever I feel like, whether that's some core work or upper body, or if I want to do any more leg work, I'll do that. And then then after that, I'll go into an ice bath. And then usually get a massage, have a shower, get changed, grab something to eat, because it's a hour drive home, so I like to have something in the car. And then I'll get home, and I'll usually just maybe have a nap, and then that's usually my day done. I might do a little bit of stretching, foam rolling in the afternoon. If I get home early enough, might go play a round of golf if I can fit it in. And that's it. Then just, chilling, relaxing, whether that's with my girlfriend or family or friends, whatever it may be, just kind of unwind. And then, that's basically what the day looks like.
I had to laugh there at the end, of your response. You said, "And that's it," as if it's just a couple of things. It's an incredibly full day, an incredibly busy day, but obviously that's the demands of what it takes to play, at the professional level. And something that you touched on earlier on was you're very highly motivated, and I want to bring it into what's called, I like to call it, the Matchfit mindset portion. You talked about being highly motivated, and you talked about the hard work and doing the extras and all that you do. Where do you get that motivation from? So when it's tough and when you're struggling, but you're going and you're doing the work every single day, and I know you love football because you told us the story earlier about being at the Australia match against Uruguay and all the stuff that comes alongside that. Whenever you're finding it tough, where does that motivation come from? What is it that makes you disciplined? What is it that makes you dedicated? What is it that gives you that fire in the belly to get up every single day and to push through and to bust yourself on that pitch? Because that day you just described to me is incredibly full. It's demanding, it's physically intense, it's probably mentally intense as well. Where does that motivation come from?
It's a great question. And as footballers, you don't really get asked that a lot, where that motivation comes from and what drives you on. I think for me, it's because I want to succeed so bad. There's things that I want to achieve in my career, and I know that the only way I can do that is by outworking everyone else and outworking myself from the previous day, previous week, month, year, whatever it may be. I want to represent my national team. I want to play the World Cup. I want to play in the Champions League, the Premier. These are things that I want to achieve, and that's what spurs me on every single day. And if at the end of my career it comes and I haven't achieved those things, okay, so be it. But at least I applied myself to my maximum, where I can then sit back and go, okay, I've done everything in my power, where I tried my hardest, I outworked everyone, and I got to where I was, and that's where my ceiling was. But I don't want to retire and, in 10, 15 years time, sit back and go, ah, I wish I would have done this. Or if I worked harder, I could have done better. I really don't want to do that. I don't want to have any regrets in this game. I feel very, very privileged to do something that I love. And, like you said, it's a very jam-packed day, but it's a blessing to be able to have this job. I'm living my childhood dream, which is to be a professional footballer. So that desire and that passion comes from just the will to succeed. That's all I really want to do. I want to achieve a lot of things in football, and I know that I need to work extremely hard to get there. So that's where that motivation comes from.
It's phenomenal to hear that, that work rate and that desire to leave nothing on the table, to give everything you have to go to as high as you can in your career. That's phenomenal. And one word that we haven't discussed yet, and it's often labeled a lot with strikers, but every now and again, if a team is struggling, you hear this word kind of thrown around that a team is short on confidence. Where does confidence fit in for you personally, and how does it affect a striker specifically? Because you hear that all the time when a striker misses a chance. Oh, he's short on confidence. Whereas I think sometimes it's kind of just thrown out and it's not really maybe correct. It could just be the ball just bounced up as the striker hit it, and it might not be short on confidence at all. But it's a word that's kind of just thrown and around, and kind of people get labelled as having no confidence quite often. But for you as a striker, and for you just even as a professional footballer, where does confidence fit in to everything else that's going on there?
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, again, going back to it, it's just doing the extra work gives me confidence, because I know in the back of my mind that I've done everything I possibly can to prepare myself for the weekend's game. If I'm sitting there on a Friday night before a Saturday game and I'm going, oh, I didn't do this or I didn't do that, maybe I might be second guessing myself. But like you said, as strikers especially, you get put in the spotlight because we're the ones that score the goals. We're the one that has to win the game for our team. And like you said, it can be just, you don't get the rub of the green. The ball might bounce. There might be, a lucky deflection. The keeper might be having an absolute worldie. So, there are many things that go into it. But for me, the main confidence comes from, putting in the hard yards and putting in the work, and then knowing in the back of my mind that I've done that, and I can just go out and play and enjoy and not have to worry about any internal, external, anything internal, external, and it's just going to be me and the ball, and that's it. And like you said, there's times as a striker where you have a chance and you miss it, and I think that comes with experience, and that's something that I'm learning at this stage in my career. Is you might get a chance, you might miss it, but you can't just dwell over that and be like, oh, like that was my chance, like I'm never going to get another one. But in 5 seconds or 5 minutes or 50 minutes, whatever it may be, you might get another chance, and then you have to take that one. So being able to stay confident in your ability is super important, and just knowing that when you get your chance, you'll take it, and no matter how many you miss, you'll get another one and you'll score the next one.
It's a phenomenal attitude to have, and I always liken it back to an interview I heard with Alan Shearer when I was a kid. Alan Shearer said he went out into every game of football he played believing he was going to score a hat trick, and the reason was because he stayed behind at training and scored a hat trick at least with all his different shots after training, whether he's hitting free kicks, penalties, shots into the corner, he always scored. So he came out into the game knowing that he can hit the net back of the net, and I just always find that little bit of that little tidbit into his mindset really, really fascinating. And I love talking about the mindset. I love talking about people's mentality. And I want to ask you about the importance of having a strong mindset and a strong mentality. How important is that to you as a professional player?
Yeah, extremely, extremely important. I think it gets overlooked quite a lot, and especially from the outside, as you know, people looking in at footballers and professional athletes, for that matter. Um, I think having a strong mindset is extremely, extremely important. For me, I could have easily gone. I got let go by my club, and there's a 3 month break, and it's we had a COVID lockdown, and I could have easily just sat on my ass and done nothing. It would have been very easy for me to do that, and eat bad food, and not train, and have a poor mindset, and think oh, why me? I deserved it over someone else. But football is a very, very short career, and you don't have time to do that stuff. The only time you have is to keep working hard and putting in the work. And I think mindset is like I said, very, very overlooked. And it's super important. For me, I like to write down, in my journal. I've got a little journal just here. I'm not going to show you what exactly is in it, but yeah, I like to sit down and write in my journal every day. Just things I'm grateful for, things that I want to achieve for the day, and I like to tick them off. And if I haven't achieved something, and it might be a setback, I know that tomorrow's a new day. I can work extremely hard tomorrow, and things will be okay. So I think mindset is extremely important. Yeah, definitely.
And with your, writing it down and even, journaling sort of your experience for the day, would you consider yourself very goal driven in that aspect?
Yeah, I like to think so. I sit down at the beginning of every season, and I write down all my goals that I want to achieve. Even when I was, I've still got the sheet of paper up on my wall in my room. I think I was maybe 17 or 16 when I first, went to Sydney FC. And I wrote down goals that I wanted to achieve for that year, in 2 years, in 3 years, 5, 10, and then my ultimate goals. And I've still got the sheet of paper there, and I look at it every day. And I love having those goals and those things to strive for and to achieve. And even if it's a year or 10 years from now, I like to then even write my daily goals. Whether that's just smiling through the day, or just enjoying being a professional footballer, or trying to score a particular type of goal in training. Goal driven, I'm very much that type of person, and I've got that characteristic about me. And I think it's worked for me.
Obviously, we've talked about mindset, we've talked about the hard work and, even writing down goals and then working extremely hard to achieve those goals. Whenever you have hit a setback, you mentioned, being let go, you could have sat in your backside and done nothing, but you decided to go out and work hard. How do you overcome those setbacks? Do you like, what is it that pushes you over the limit to say, nah, I'm not letting this hold me back. I'm just going to keep going.
Um, you know, I think for me, because I put so much hard work and time and effort and blood and sweat and a lot of tears into it, um, I've gotten to a point now where I've said, why would I give up now? I've put so much work into it as far, and I've achieved what I've achieved, but like, what if I just keep going? Like, what if I keep going for another day, another week, another month, a year? What could happen? But if I, said to myself, oh, I put in all this work and I'm not achieving what I want to achieve, and I called it quits, I don't think I could live with that. And I think I'd be very regretful later in life. So I've gotten to a point where I've put so much work in that, I know that I will achieve what I want to achieve in this game. And yeah, I think it just comes back to putting in so much work that I've gotten to a point where, why would I give up now kind of mentality.
I love that mentality, and I think that's something for our listeners to really take on board. The hard work is, that's why you put in the hard work. You're motivated to put in that hard work because you want to achieve the best that you can achieve. You're not going to stop, you're not going to quit, why stop now? And for any young person listening to this podcast and you're going up through the youth setup and you're trying to get, to go pro as a professional, why stop now? You've been putting in the work, keep at it, keep going, endurance. And a key thing that I've noticed about you and all of your answers and how we've even had this conversation is your attitude. You're wanting to learn, you're wanting to develop, you're wanting to push yourself, you're wanting to be pushed to achieve and to work hard. And I think that's incredible. And I think one of the questions I love asking is actually if you could offer a piece of advice to a young person who wants to go pro, what advice would you give them? And but as we begin to close, I want to ask you that because there are a lot of people listening and there is a lot of phenomenal information that you have given us on this podcast. I'm going to ask you for a little bit more. If you could give one piece of advice to young people listening to this, what piece of advice would you give them?
Um, it's tough. I'm still young. I'm only 22, so I'm still looking for advice from the senior players in my team and the relationships that I've made over my footballing career thus far. I'm still looking for advice every single day. I think one from a personal experience, I won't give one that someone's given me. I don't think that's the right way to do it. I think one from personal experience is like this whole podcast has been about has just been hard work.
Mm-hmm.
I think just literally outworking the person next to you and being the hardest worker in the room will get you places. Everyone's got talent, whether that might be in football or in a different sport or in business, whatever it may be. Everyone's got some talent. And the only way to make that talent shine is by working extremely hard and almost becoming obsessed with it, really. And you've got a short window to do it. So why not do it? I think that mindset of, it's too much time, it's too much effort. It's a good challenge for whatever it may be. Putting your 110% effort and dedication into something and giving it your all will get you places. And I think that's the main bit of advice I'd give to young players.
And the thing as well with that, not to try and add to what you've said because what you've said is phenomenal, but what you have said will ultimately give people that extra 1% that they need in various aspects of their game through that hard work. And I think that's just so important for young players coming through, even older players, seasoned veterans, maybe people come to the end of your career. It's not over yet. You can still work hard. You can still give that extra 1%. You can still finish on a high. I think there's something in that for everybody. And as you mentioned, even in business, in every walk of life, to take from your story and from your journey. And Jordi, this has been a phenomenal conversation. Where can people find you on social media to follow you and to see what you're up to and to continue to support you on your journey?
I mainly use Instagram, so it would be Jordi_Swibel. And yeah, that's basically it, mate. So no, thank you very much for the chat. I really appreciate it. Hope even if you take one thing away from what I've said, that's great. But yeah, I really appreciate you guys having me on. It's been fantastic.
Absolutely delighted to get you on the show. Of course, you're starting the season next week. Good luck with that. All the best. And that we'll be keeping an eye on it, hoping to see your name up with goals, and more goals this season. And for all of our
Thank you.
listeners, at Matchfit Football, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram for your Matchfit Football needs. This is the Matchfit Football Podcast. This is Jordi Swibel. We've had a great conversation. We appreciate you listening to it. Jordi, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, mate. Cheers.